All right, let's talk about something we've all seen. You know those slick AI demos? The ones that promise these fully autonomous agents that can just spin up an entire app from a single prompt while you grab a coffee? It's an incredible idea, right? But as I'm sure many of you have found out, the reality? Well, it can feel a lot less like magic and a whole lot more like just chaos.
And that really gets to the heart of the problem, doesn't it? When you just hand over the keys to a super powerful AI without any real oversight, you're pretty much letting it fly blind. Yeah, it looks amazing for the first few seconds, but it can get out of control so fast, it's just burning through tokens, maybe editing the completely wrong files, or just veering completely off course from what you actually wanted in the first place.
So, it makes you stop and ask yourself a really important question. The next time you hit run on one of those autonomous agents, is it really understanding what you want, your intent, or is it kind of just guessing its way through, making its best shot at what to do next from one moment to the next?
And this slide, I think, just breaks down that disconnect perfectly. On one hand, we're promised this effortless automation. But what's the reality? Well, it's often an AI just burning through your tokens and pricey resources on attempts that just don't work. We're told we'll get this incredible speed, but instead we end up with an agent that's drifting away from the goal, and we have to keep pulling it back. And we hope for some kind of intelligent execution, but what we're left with is this total black box. We have no clue why it did what it did.
So that's the problem, and this is where Copilot Cockpit comes into the picture. Now, it's really important to get this. This isn't another one of those autonomous agents. It's something different. Think of it more like a local control system, an orchestration layer that you run right in VS Code. Its whole purpose is to put a human pilot, you, back in charge of your AI Copilot.
And this quote from the project's own docs just nails its whole philosophy. It says, Copilot Cockpit separates planning, approval, execution, and review, so autonomy is earned step by step instead of assumed from the start. I mean, that's brilliant, right? It's all about building trust. Instead of just assuming the AI is ready to go solo right out of the box, Copilot Cockpit says, nope, you've got to earn that autonomy. And it does it step by step, with a human watching over the whole process.
So let's be super clear here. This tool isn't anti-automation at all, not even close. The real goal is to make that automation accountable, to make it transparent and, actually effective. It's all about beefing up your role as a developer by giving you this crucial layer of control and review. It ensures the AI is working with you, not just for you in some mysterious hidden way.
Okay, so how does it actually pull this off? Well, it all comes down to a really simple structured workflow that the creators cleverly called the flight plan. It's this elegant four-step loop that makes sure the whole process stays collaborative.
And here it is. It's a really simple but powerful cycle. First, you capture and discuss the work. This is the brainstorming phase. Then, and this is key, you approve the work. You give the green light. Only after that approval does it go into the execute run phase. And finally, you review the outcomes. You see what it did before you let it do anything else. It's this simple loop that makes sure you are always the pilot. You're always in command.
All right, let's get into it. Copilot Cockpit is a plugin built on top of the GitHub Copilot chat system inside VS Code, so you can use it directly in your editor for essentially any coding project, and really for almost any kind of project at all. If you understand how agents and LLMs work inside a computer environment, this becomes very powerful. A project can mean almost anything: a task, a company, a startup, research, something useful for the world. Basically anything you can organize in a folder on your computer. This is not a tutorial on how to use custom agents, skills, and MCPs. For that, look at the documentation from GitHub Copilot, which is linked in the video description and at the end of the GitHub repository. It is built around the GitHub Copilot plugin that comes natively with VS Code and VS Code Insiders, which already includes many great features. I use it with VS Code Insiders, so I always have access to the newest releases. There are updates almost daily, so it stays very current. The team behind it has done a really good job building the interface. That said, I personally still like to see my code clearly, because I do not think of it as just code. With this setup, you can build almost anything. So how does it work? You have your normal chat sessions here with your agent. You can choose your model, and Copilot supports many of the newest and best models. It can also connect to an Open Router API, which is very useful if you want to use custom models for custom agents. That means you can run sub-agents with cheaper models, or models that behave differently. For example, you could use something like Inception Mercury 2, which is interesting as a diffusion-based LLM that can do code editing. At the top here, you can see that I, together with the creator of the core plugin, built a system on top of this. Tasks are no longer something you only run manually. He added scheduled tasks, and I built a larger system around that. Here in the first section, you see the task list. A task is something prepared for an agent to do, either once or on a recurring schedule. For example, this one runs weekly on Monday at 8:30 a.m. It acts as the weekly release note draft for this workspace, so the documentation for the plugin stays up to date. What happens when the scheduled time is reached? Very simply, it starts a new chat session. If I click Run Now, that does exactly the same thing as if the timer hit 0. It starts the task defined in the plugin and runs it in a fresh chat session. The nice thing is that we can define how often the task runs, which custom agent should run it, and which model should be used. So this gives you a lot of flexibility. You can keep costs low, control the style, and choose the behavior you want. We can also add quick skills, so the agent executing the prompt knows which tools to use. I use skills so agents know exactly when and how to use their MCP tools. In the options section, we can define many variables, whether a task is workspace only or global, whether it should use jitter so it does not run at the exact same time every time, or whether we want to do a test run in 3 minutes to check if everything is working. You can also mark something as a manual session. That means it is basically a reusable prompt that you want to run more than once, but not on a schedule. You still want to keep track of it, so this option exists for that. Another option is to continue the active chat. If that is enabled, the task does not open a new session. Instead, it prompts directly into the currently active session.
Then we can click Update Task and go back to the main view. Here you can see the task again with many options. Edit it, copy the prompt, and all the usual things. You can also quickly change the assigned agent and model directly from here without opening the task editor. That is very convenient. There are more parts we could look at, but I think it is better to show you the other tabs now. The rest of the section is fairly self-explanatory. So let's move on to the To-Do cockpit. The To-Do cockpit is very useful for communication between the AI executor of a task and the human user. You can discuss new ideas there, research things, and keep track of work over time. It is essentially a to-do list system with all the expected features, so work can be tracked more efficiently and things do not get lost. This whole interface can also be controlled from the chat window, so you do not have to manage everything manually. The plugin includes a built-in skill for agents that can control the whole Copilot Cockpit system, create tasks, delete tasks, and do many other actions. Here, for example, is the scheduler we use internally. You do not have to install that part manually. What you can see here is the MCP server that comes with the system, and it can be added to any agent, so the agent can do the work. I have also created a custom agent team for the plugin that can be added manually, so you have a default agent team that works together to finish a task. One important thing to notice is that you have to activate and update them manually. We'll talk about that later in the settings part of the plugin. Now let's go back to the To-Do cockpit. We can drag and drop tasks, and some of that can also be automated if you want. When you edit a to-do, you have the basic options you would expect: title, linked agent, labels, and flags. The agent field is important because it tells us which to-do belongs to which task or agent workflow. Labels can be added by the user, or the agent can add them automatically. Flags are another very useful concept. Flags describe the state of the to-do from the agent's perspective. Only one flag at a time is possible. That is important because it gives us a very clear and current state. For example, research can create new to-dos for features or bugs that appear in the repository, and then those can be reviewed by the user. That makes them easy to see and helps the user decide what to do next. A flag could mean something like needs bot review. Another could indicate that the AI completed its part but could not fully finish the task. Ready means the research is back, the work is prepared, and the item is ready for the next step. Below that, we have comments. You can add a new comment with a prompt describing what should be done next. Then, once you give the to-do its ready flag, it moves into the scheduled task list, where it waits for execution. After the task is completed, the user can approve or reject it. Rejecting does not mean the item is gone forever. Rejected items are moved into a kind of archive, so they are hidden from the active workflow, but still available later if needed.
If we set it to do to ready, it creates a draft in the task list, so the ready item can be turned into an executable task more quickly. As you've seen, we can also assign different colors to labels and flags. We can edit those and choose whatever we want. The difference between labels and flags is important. Flags represent the agent state. Labels are just for user convenience. So when we are done with a task, we save it and set it to ready. Then it gets added properly, and from there we can create a draft and turn it into a new one-time task. That way, the to-do cockpit and the task list stay synchronized, and we already have useful MCP-related context stored there as well.
The nice thing is that we can create to-dos for many different ideas, long before we fully define them. You can capture something early, keep it structured, and come back to it later. That helps you avoid losing ideas and makes it easier to actually realize your vision instead of letting it disappear into random notes. In the task list, we can also filter by different sections, collapse sections, or filter by labels. Now, on the next tab, we have Jobs. A job is essentially a task made up of multiple steps. For example, imagine you want to crawl websites to find potential business customers, add them to a spreadsheet, do deeper research on each one, and then write each of them a personalized outreach message with a partnership offer. That is a workflow with several stages, and that is what jobs are for. You can open an existing job or create a new one. You can place jobs in folders, use schedule presets, and organize them however you want. It works a bit like N8N in the sense that it lets you build workflows an agent should execute. What happens internally is that each step creates a separate task in the task list. That gives you much more granular control. So if you have a multi-step process and you're not yet sure whether it works well, you can test it step by step in the workflow view. Everything can be orchestrated by you as the user, tested piece by piece, and once it all works the way you want, you can compile it into a task that runs the whole process at once. That gives much better results than writing one giant prompt all at once. It is much more reliable to build it step by step and validate the process. This view also gives you a very nice graphical overview of the workflow. You can find these in the job sections, grouped by the different jobs they belong to. You can also create folders, rename folders, and create new jobs directly from the jobs page to keep everything organized. The last tab is Research. This is inspired by Andrei Karpathy's idea of giving agents a loop with a more deterministic outcome. For example, if you want to speed up a website or optimize anything, really, you can let the agent run a loop where it benchmarks whether its newest idea is actually better than the previous one. That way, it can iteratively improve results based on measurable outcomes. I think this is a very cool concept, and here we have a graphical interface for it. That makes it easier to optimize systems and get better performance from what you built. The plugin also comes with a decent how-to page, which explains everything in detail. That is very practical if you do not want to rewatch the full YouTube video later and just want a quick reference. Another very useful feature is that the plugin itself can be explained by an agent. If you click that button, it starts a new session and gives you an introduction to the skills and a tour of what the plugin does. At the moment, the user interface is available in 3 languages: English, German, and Japanese. You can switch the language here, and there are also many more settings available. For example, if you did not specify a default agent for tasks, you can define one in the settings page, along with a default model. That is very useful. You can also choose the storage system used by the plugin. SQLite is the primary option and should generally be used. JSON is a bit easier if you want to back things up manually. There are also options for showing or hiding certain built-in properties and systems. For example, if you do not want to use the default flags that come with the plugin and the skills, and you prefer to handle to-dos differently, you can turn those default flags off. I added that option because some users may want to use only the to-do cockpit without my more opinionated flag system. If you want to set up the plugin, you can go into the settings and set up the MCP server. When you click the Setup button, it should create an MCP entry automatically, and the MCP should then be available and running. You can also click Sync Bundled Skills. Skills are not updated live on purpose, because if you manually customize a skill and an automatic update replaced it, that would be frustrating. So syncing is intentionally manual. There are also options to configure skills, switch behaviors on or off, and adjust the plugin in other ways depending on your setup. Now, we haven't talked much about the agents yet, so let's do that. If you haven't familiarized yourself with the concept of a custom agent system yet, look at the documentation for GitHub Copilot. Or look up YouTube channels like Jack Roberts or one of the many great AI agent explainer channels on YouTube. It is important to understand this because it is what makes a great AI setup. Learn what a skill is, learn how memory works, learn what you can do with MCP. All other concepts are additionally for your convenience, but if you understand that foundation, you can build an autonomous project with it. The custom agents I created form a small team that can be used for almost anything. I intentionally did not make them overly specific because I believe a good orchestration system should be flexible. That way, you do not have to start from zero and already have a small team ready as a starting point. The main agent is the CEO. The CEO is the orchestrator of the sub-agent system. This is possible through the Run Sub-Agent tool built into GitHub Copilot, and that is extremely handy. The CEO should use as few tools as possible directly. Its job is not to do the work itself. It has access to validation and verification capabilities, but in general, it should delegate. The other agents should do the work. That is what makes the CEO the captain of the team. Then there is the Cockpit to-do agent. This one is essentially the controller for the plugin. If you want to change something in Cockpit, you can tell this agent, or the CEO can delegate the task to it. In practice, you can often just use the CEO, and it will delegate to the correct agent automatically. Then there is the Custom Agent Foundry. This agent can create new specialized agents for the team. So if you want a market researcher, a coding agent, a social media expert, or something else, you can create one with the Agent Foundry. The documentation specialist is, in my opinion, a basic agent every repository should have. The planner does research for the CEO, and the remediation implementer is specialized in focused fixes, local refactoring, and tightly scoped remediation work. There is also a button to add the MCP and the skills to Codex. That means you can start a Codex session and use the plugin's MCP and skills there as well. The only thing you cannot do from Codex is start a scheduled task there, because scheduled tasks always begin in the Copilot chat window. For tasks that use flags, there are also custom prompts linked to those flag states. That means when a flag to do is executed, extra instructions can automatically be attached to the prompt, so the agent already knows what to do without you having to repeat it every time. If you encounter problems, there is also a logging option.
Okay, let's recap all the features of Copilot Cockpit here again.
Copilot Cockpit gives you a few different tools to manage different kinds of work, and each one has a very specific job to do. First up, you've got the To-Do Cockpit. This is basically your mission control center. It's the central hub where every potential piece of work gets captured, discussed, and fine-tuned. And here's the most important part, nothing gets sent to the AI to execute until you've explicitly given it the thumbs up. This is how you take that messy stream of ideas and turn it into a clear, visible, and totally manageable queue of work.
Next up, for your more direct, straightforward actions, you have tasks. A task is the absolute simplest unit of work. One prompt, one action, that's it. You can think of it for things like recurring maintenance jobs, maybe running a security check every morning, or for any simple one-off command where you just need one specific thing done reliably.
But what happens when one single task isn't going to cut it? Well, that's when you use jobs. A job is an ordered, multi-step workflow. It's for those deeper, more agentic kinds of processes. So instead of letting the AI just run off on one long, uninterrupted chain where it could easily go off the rails, jobs let you build in these explicit checkpoints for you to review at the most critical stages. It keeps you in control always.
And finally, we have research. This one is all about discovery. So here, you can set up these loops that iterate against a specific metric. For example, you could tell it, hey, try to refactor this piece of code over and over until the performance gets 10% better. It's also super useful when the AI needs to go out, gather new information from the web, and then bring it back for you to review before it even thinks about starting to change any code.
So when you put all of these pieces together, the cockpit, the tasks, the jobs, the research, you start to see a really clear picture of a different kind of future for AI in development. It's a future that's not built on just blind faith in autonomy, but on a real partnership that's built on accountability.
So what are the big takeaways here? What should you really remember from all this? Well, the core ideas are pretty simple, but they're incredibly powerful. First and foremost, keep the human in charge. That's just non-negotiable. Second, make your automation accountable so you can actually trust what it's doing. Third, take that chaotic mess of ideas and discoveries and turn it into a visible, manageable queue.
And finally, by doing all of this, you're actually building a continuous project memory, making your whole code base smarter and more resilient with every single change.
And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Maybe the goal here isn't to build an AI that just blindly replaces the developer. Maybe, just maybe, the most powerful and effective AI is one that acts like a true partner, one you can trust, you can guide, and you can collaborate with, all from inside a cockpit that you designed.
That is the whole plugin. I really hope this gave you a good overview of what is possible with it and how you can use it to build more structured, more powerful agent workflows directly inside VS Code. There's still a lot I want to add, improve, and experiment with, so this is definitely not the end of it. If you have ideas for features, improvements, or things you think are missing, let me know in the comments or open a GitHub issue. And if you run into bugs, definitely tell me so I can improve it further. Thanks a lot for watching, have fun using the plugin, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.